Hi everyone, I'm Seth, and welcome to Thrift Store Tech. Something I love going thrifting for and finding is old audio equipment and old media forms, and I'm kind of having a love affair with tape at the moment. I love finding old cassettes. I absolutely love finding reel-to-reel albums, which are never quite easy to come by, so whenever I find them, I'm very excited. But I also, for the past few years, have had a on again, off again love affair with this format of tape, 8-track, which is not always regarded as the best quality, but I do find that tape in general has very good sound. Even 8-tracks, which are generally regarded as old relics from the 70s that just were cheap and disposable kinds of things, which kind of were to a point. But I do know that played back on proper equipment, they can sound pretty amazing. And I've had a couple of amazing 8-track decks, and I've sold them and moved on and come back to them and sold that one and moved on and come back to them again. And I came across a great deal on an 8-track deck, a proper one by Panasonic, and I went ahead and I grabbed it. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. So this is a Panasonic 8-track player and recorder that I picked up recently at the Goodwill Clearance Center. As you can see, it's actually been sitting for a while collecting some dust, and this price tag, while not what I paid for it, I think I paid about $1.99 for it, states not working. But I'm wondering if this was just a return that somebody did, because I grabbed it just to see if I could fix it, and as it turns out, if you put in an 8-track and just push it in, it will turn on. And I'm going to have to talk over this, of course, so I don't get hit with a copyright strike or something, but this is a pretty obscure CB song album, so I don't think there's much missing. And I know this sounds weird, but it's supposed to be a squirrel singing, so think chipmunks. See, this one sounds a lot more human. And I think that one may be reaching the end of its track, or the song just finished. Oh, there we go. Nope, the song had just finished. But what's interesting about this one that I have not seen on another 8-track player is this. It's that when you're done with track 4, if you hit the program selector to go to the next track, it will eject the 8-track. And the reason it's doing this is because of this switch. Pan eject or continuous play. This also has a fast forward switch, which you don't see on every 8-track player out there. But because it's on the pan eject setting, when I finished with track 4, or when I was done with it, it popped it out. If we switch this up to continuous play, where I had it before for testing, we'll start back over with track 1. Oh, there we go. I was a little worried there for a second, but we'll start back over on track 1, we'll go to 2, go to 3, go to 4, and back to track 1 without the eject. This 8-track, by the way, I grabbed just for testing purposes, but I love quirky stuff like this. This is all ears, 10 original songs, all about CB two-way radio, and that first one, as I was saying, sounded like a squirrel. Hey Shirley, this is Squirrely, which is just a really funny little song that capitalized on the CB craze of the 70s. It was released by Realistic, which was Radio Shack's house brand. There's that. And then, coming around to this side, we can see there's the program selector button, there's an eject button if you don't want to bother with the pan eject feature. There's a record function that I haven't tested yet, but I do have a 8-track tape that can be recorded on, so I'm interested in trying it out and just seeing if it works. I had one years ago, and I used to record modern songs onto 8-track, which was just kind of amusing for me. Level meter and volume controls, and this is something I don't think I've really seen. Usually when I have volume controls like this on the front of the unit, it's for the line in for recording, but that's not the case with this one. This one actually does increase or decrease the sound. as we'll demonstrate. Okay, here we go. So, turning up the right side. As you can tell, it gets louder. That level meter is barely moving. Let's turn that down. And now this side. So it does turn it up channel by channel, which I really find interesting because I don't really see that happen very often. But I have noticed that those meters are really not extremely responsive. And I'm thinking that even though this is working, at least in my book, I'm thinking that this could mean that those pots or the potentiometers in the level settings just need a little deoxit, a little contact cleaner to get in there and just make sure that those are making good contact, because I feel like at full volume, those meters should be jumping more than they are. So that's what we're going to try to do to take a look at today. Okay, we're over here at the bench. I have the unit unplugged, and we're just going to do a quick walk around here. Actually, just going to take a rag and just give this a quick little dust down. I'll clean it in more detail later. But just to show you, I've taken the screws out that would be holding this together. Here's the back, just a simple piece of chipboard. Here's our bottom panel that just fell forward with nothing there to hold that in place. To prevent electric shock, do not remove cover. No user serviceable parts inside. Refer servicing to qualified service personnel, which I am not. Always amuses me when I see stuff like that. So I removed the screws that held the back and the bottom on. We still have pieces in the middle. And just to show you quickly how this is working, I'm going to plug that in just briefly. I'm going to take our CB tape, and it's not connected to the stereo right now, so we won't hear anything. And I'm actually loading it upside down, but putting it in, we can see how those levers actuated to start up the motor, or to start the motor going over here. And that belt actually seems still good. It's at least good enough to my ears. And I'm definitely no audiophile. I'm sure there are people in the audience screaming up a blue streak about, oh my gosh, how are you even using 8-track, let alone one that is not completely serviced. But to my ears, it sounded good. Now here's the challenge, is that we need to get to these pots to be able to spray in some contact cleaner and work it in there just to make sure that we get some decent responsiveness out of those meters. And let's see if we can get a closer look in here at where those pots are. It's a little hard to see, but I'm turning it right now and you can see where that pot is. And this actually appears to be a pretty long shaft on this pot. Sometimes I can just remove the outer knob and spray into there and I'll hit it directly. That does not look to be the case with this one. So unfortunately, this looks like it's going to take some more disassembly to get access to that spot. Now, first off, I'm surprised that there were no screws on the side to get access to this, but it would appear, from what I can see, that this chassis is bolted to this part, which is in turn bolted into the side of the frame. So if I were to take an educated guess, I would say that I need to remove 1, 2, 3, 4, those 4 screws to be able to slide this out and actually get access to things. And part of doing that too is going to be removing the knobs on the front, which thankfully they slide off pretty easily. I actually had not tried taking these off before, so lucky for me they came off pretty nice and smoothly. They're just plastic. And I think the other switches should be good as they are. So I think they'll be pretty easy to keep track of. Famous last words for me. And let's see, if I'm correct, this should just slide out. Aha! Yes! This side is being a little fussy. Oh. And, oh, I forgot. Okay, we are going to have to remove a couple of other things on the front. Okay, so the next step would be to remove this nut and these 2 nuts that are holding the microphone and headphone jacks in place. Let's see if I can turn it with a pair of needle nose pliers. I would think I can. Yep, there we go, it's loosened. Oh, there we go.
Okay, so there's one nut. And incidentally, as I mentioned earlier, I'm sure some people are out there saying about 8-tracks, oh my gosh, why are you even bothering? Because they are typically derided as a pretty low quality source of audio. But I have in the past had an 8-track unit that was a Marantz Super Scope brand attached to my stereo unit, and that one, provided the tapes weren't too far deteriorated, that one actually sounded pretty amazing. So I would not write off the whole format as complete garbage, although some of it certainly can be. And everything just comes free from the chassis now. Yes, this was definitely worth the effort to do, because now I can get right inside that potentiometer and work back and forth with some contact cleaner, or Deoxit is my usual go-to for this. And again, of course, I do have this unplugged because you do not want to mess around with any live wire electronics. This is actually kind of fun to see from the front because this is in the right orientation. This is how it would look if it had its faceplate on. And of course, here are lights for our track indicators, slot for the 8-track cartridge, our switches for play and fast forward, our switch for continuous or pan eject. I love that. And of course, here are our level meters and our volume adjustments. So what we're going to do is spray some Deoxit in there, work those knobs back and forth a bit, and then I may just very carefully plug this in and stick the tape in there and just see if those meters are more responsive. And as I was saying, my go-to product personally for this is this stuff, Deoxit D5. And I have heard of people just using regular contact cleaner for this process, but I've also heard, I haven't experienced this myself, but I have also heard that regular contact cleaner can still gunk up in there a bit, whereas this stuff is usually made specifically for musical equipment, and it's really never let me down. And these pots are not scratchy. You know, sometimes you'll get a stereo where you'll be very quiet, you'll turn it up, you'll hear and then all of a sudden it's blasting at you. That's because of poor contact within the volume knobs. And I'm not getting that scratchy effect with this on this unit. It's probably not great in there after likely some 50 odd years since it was made. So I'm just going to position the straw right by the opening of that pot and just give a squirt in there. It doesn't need a lot. Just work it back and forth a few times to really make sure that the Deoxit gets in there and cleans out whatever sediment or gunk may have settled in there over the years. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here with this one. And maybe it's my imagination, but I feel like I can already feel it loosening up a bit from where it was. And I can see down in there where I've oversprayed a bit. And I can see some moisture down in there. That's probably the Deoxit. Is there any on this side over here by this pot, I wonder? It's a bit harder to see over here because of the rat's nest of wires, but I don't think it is. But I'm going to give this a little time to dry out before I go and plug this in. Okay, and while that's continuing to dry out, I realized we might as well clean up the tape head while I have this open. Usually you would have to reach in, if this were all assembled, with a long cotton swab and get to there. But since this is open, it makes it life a little easier. So what I'm going to use to clean this is just some plain old isopropyl alcohol, 91%. Generally you want the highest percentage of alcohol that you can get. I've always found 91% works for me. I would avoid anything like 50% because that's just half water. I don't know how well this is going to come across on camera, but I'm just going to take the alcohol. I'm going to take just a plain old regular cotton swab or Q-tip, and I've got it soaked with some of the alcohol, and I'm just going to go in here and give that tape head a clean, because heaven only knows the last time this was cleaned, if ever. But pulling that out, and let's take a look at the cotton swab here. And got a little dirt off of there, but not much. I've actually found this to be my experience with my reel-to-reel deck too, is every so often I will clean it, and I might get a little brown, but for the most part the heads come out pretty clean. Yeah, it's kind of faint, but we are getting a little more brown off, and that's just oxide that's come off of tapes that have been played in here previously. Now, I do have to say there have been some times when I've cleaned tape heads and the Q-tip has just come out pure straight up brown because it has never been cleaned, and those are just really gross and take a while to go through. But I've been fortunate otherwise. Usually they come out actually looking pretty clean. And taking a look here, again, slight discoloration, but it's looking better than the other one did, at least to my eyes, with a little bit of brown oxide on there. But that should get our tape head nice and clean. And something that I just now noticed about this tape head, typically 8-track players will have the tape head enclosed in a plastic frame, and that plastic frame unfortunately tends to crack very easily, especially over time. You got to consider these units were very big in the 70s, so we're looking at 50 plus years, like I said before. And once those things crack, I know some people have been able to epoxy them back together, super glue them back together. I've never had luck with that. So it's really refreshing to see that this is actually in a metal bracket and not a plastic one. Okay, we've cut to later. I've given the deoxit some time to dry out. And I am now going to try to plug in a tape. It's not connected to any speakers, so we're not going to hear anything. Or we should hopefully see some more activity on the VU meters. Right now, those volume knobs are turned all the way down, but let me slide the tape in. Let's try turning up the channel and seeing what we get. Okay, well, I'm turning the knobs up all the way, and we're getting... I feel like we're getting some more activity, not as much as I expected, honestly. I feel like it's a combination of the deoxit and cleaning the tape heads. They are a lot more responsive, I'll give it that. Let's try, just out of curiosity, putting in a different tape. Now at the moment, I only have 3 8-track tapes in my collection. I had more once upon a time, but I moved on from that deck and sold it off and didn't really do anything with them for a while there. But of course we've seen the all ears CB radio tape. This is the other one that I happen to have that I'm a little hesitant to put into any test unit, but I happen to find this one of Beatles Rubber Soul. I'm definitely hearing it. The level meters are just really not responsive. Okay, let's eject that so I can talk without hearing this in my ears. But I promise you I am getting sound through both channels. It's just not coming through reflected on the VU meters, which is just interesting. But let's try jumping tracks and see what happens. I was actually getting some what they call crosstalk, where you're picking up a bit of one track instead of the other one. And I'm not sure if this is the tape or if the heads are misaligned, because I did not seem to have this problem on the other 8-track, on the CB radio one, which I'm going to try again and just see if I get some. Maybe I knocked something out of alignment without realizing it. I'm on track 1 with no crosstalk that I can tell, so everything is very clear on just one channel, and it's all coming through very clearly through my headphones. That must just look like Attack of the 8-track. So all I can guess is that it's an issue with the Rubber Soul 8-track, which makes me sad. I also got to figure that if you had the choice of these two 8-tracks, which one would probably sound better to you? It's probably not the all ears one. And I'm biased being a Beatles fan, but still. I have one other 8-track that I found at the thrift store. Of course I found it at the thrift store, right? And that's this one, which is actually a recording tape. And there's probably something recorded on here, although there's nothing noted. Oh, wait, never mind. Okay, no idea what that means. But I have actually not tried this tape yet, so I would be curious to see how it sounds and what's on there. Of course, I'm not going to be able to actually play what's on there for everyone, most likely, due to copyright, but I'll try it. And actually, this 8-track, just wanted to point out, came with something that I've never seen on another 8-track, and it just kind of blew my mind a little bit. I've seen them come in cardboard sleeves like this that offer some protection to the tape on top, but not a whole lot. They're very flimsy, and most people probably threw them away. This one actually has a little red plastic cover on top protecting the tape. If we pop that off, we can see the tape. Actually, it occurs to me the problem with rubber sole might be the sponge under the tape. So like I said, rubber sole probably got a lot more play than the CB radio tape, unless that was just belonged to a trucker. But looking in here, it's a little hard to see, but these cartridges have a little spongy piece of adhesive down here that helps push the tape against the playhead, and over time that can become dried up or slip out, and if it does affect the sound. So it's possible that that just needs to be replaced. Let's see if we have a better view of it on here. Okay, this one's a different model. This one actually has a couple of metal prongs with felt pads that help push the tape rather than just a plastic piece there. And this recordable one has the more typical tape style, like what rubber sole has. So let's try putting this in, and I will see if I can hear anything. I did not expect this. This is actually a Spanish language course. It is teaching me how to say regular and gracias. Let's see if that's on all the tracks. Por favor. I am probably butchering this. And track 4. Oh, same thing here. So this is actually a tape of Spanish language lessons, which is pretty cool in itself. I won't feel too bad recording over it. For it to test the record function, that's something that I'll do later. I'm not getting any crosstalk on that. It's very clear what is on each channel. So all I can guess for rubber sole is that it needs that sponge replaced, because that's probably what's making the tape slip around a bit on the head. No le entiendo muy bien. I know extremely little Spanish, so I'm pretty sure that was saying I don't understand very well. I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will. But either way, those meters were a lot more responsive than they were with the music tapes. So I'm assuming that this was just recorded at a higher level on this tape for the language course. It's good to know that those meters are responsive when you get enough sound into them. And it's good to know that the crosstalk problem is not the deck, it is sadly most likely the rubber sole 8-track itself. And hopefully that can be fixed, because, like I said, I am a huge Beatles fan, so hopefully we can get that going. No hable tan deprisa. This is going... It's not playing fast, but the course is going a little too fast for me to keep up. I speak a tiny bit of Spanish and a tiny bit of German, but not nearly enough to keep up with this, and this is very basic. So with those fixed, let's put her back together. Got our casing with our front plate and everything. So since this is upside down, of course the chassis is going to have to go in upside down. First off, I'm going to make sure that the recording and headphone jacks, or the microphone and headphone jacks, are in this casing. And actually, I'm going to put those in place before I start doing that. And it just occurred to me, I'm not sure which jack is which, but most likely red is the right channel. So let's just put these in here. Oh, that's right, they're up here at the top. Okay. And like I said, red is most likely the right channel. That's what it's always been in my experience. I've got that in, and those are in pretty nice and solid. Now we're just going to get the headphone jack in place just the same way. Doesn't quite reach. All right, let's lay the chassis down then. Maybe start sliding it into the casing just a bit, because thankfully whoever engineered this allowed for some slack in the wiring. Sometimes the tolerances are so tight that it's really hard to get things positioned correctly in there, especially with stuff that's been made in the modern day. All right, that jack's in place. I'm just going to put the holding nut on there. Of course, the other thing to be a little bit aware of is that you don't want to crack any aged plastic. But, okay, there we go. Now it's in very nice and solid. Let's just slide the chassis in. Okay, it's not lining up quite correctly, and I think it's the wiring for the headphone and mic jacks. This is probably something extremely simple that I'm just messing up. Okay, apologies that wasn't a camera view, but I think I figured out what my issue was. Ah, yes, okay, there it is. Alright, so these wires kind of have to tuck under it or they're going to get caught in the faceplate. I'm sure that somewhere, someone watching this is cringing, going, "Oh, it's so easy, you idiot. Why are you not doing this the right way?" But, like I said when I looked at that warning label, I am not a qualified service professional. But I think this should do it. They're tucked into that little more open spot. And let's just slide these in. Let's just make sure that the screw holes line up here, which actually they do. They line up pretty perfectly. I didn't think it was in all the way, but these 4 holes are lining up nicely. The chassis is nice and secure. Let's see our front. I'm just going to turn those down to 0 so I can put the knobs back on easily. Let's line up that notch with the lowest level. Same thing on this channel. Our tape slot is lined up nicely. All of our buttons and switches are lined up nicely. So now all that's left is to put the bottom and the back on. Let's take the back side. And this is thankfully not as complicated as some units I've worked on. All I have to do is line it up with the cord, line this up with the jacks, because we have our line in for recording, our line out for playback. Thankfully the back does not have a notch that has to align with that. I just have to make sure that I'm aligning the screw holes correctly. So let's have another quick look at the bottom. I was wondering about this. I was thinking that the chassis might have to line up with these, but they don't. Those 2 holes are what these screw holes are for. So I can flip this right over, get the power cord out of the way, just set it down, and boom. I should just have to put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws. Yeah. That's not perfect because I know there should be 2 of those squares here and here, and I have no idea what happened to those squares, unfortunately. Let's turn this around and let's get a look at the front. Looking at the front now, we can see where everything lines up. Here's our play fast forward switch. Here's our continuous play or pan eject. Our track indicators, program selector, eject, record button, record light, volume controls, level controls, and of course back over here our headphone and mic jacks. Okay, moment of truth. I'm going to plug it in and we're going to make sure that it is still playing correctly. Alright, I can hear it. It is going through clearly. It's some kind of comedy bit about truckers and bootlegging, but it is playing correctly. And lastly, let's try our Spanish class. I can hear tape hiss. Where's my Spanish lesson? De hablar es más fácil. Usted dispense, pero no lo entiendo. Okay, like I said, I have no idea what I'm saying. I'm assuming I'm not saying something offensive, but I have no idea what I'm saying. But it is coming through.
So since that's something that I know will probably not get copyright striked, let's just plug it into the stereo out here and give you a chance to actually hear what is on that tape. Okay, we are plugged into my garage stereo. There are RCA jacks going to the line out. And we should be all set to go, so let's see how we hear this. Okay, it took a moment for it to kick on, and it actually started a little slow. I got a little worried there for a second, but it does seem to be playing correctly, as you can hear. And as you can hear from the record pops and clicks, this was clearly recorded from a course that was originally on record. Let's try changing programs. Oh, there we go.
¿Puede usted decirme? ¿Puede usted decirme dónde hay un hotel?
And there are our meters finally reacting the way I expected them to. That was with the volume turned all the way up. I'm turning it back to mid right now. But yes, actually that label makes a lot more sense now. Record 1, side 2. So this is probably very basic beginner Spanish, and I'm just not getting it. But popping that out. Last thing I'm going to do is get this sticker off. And I'm going to use a favorite trick of mine. That's just, again, the rubbing alcohol. That's just, again, the rubbing alcohol. And I'm just going to take a paper towel. Get a bit onto there to soak it through. Bit of there on there to soak it through, and start taking this tag off by soaking it with the alcohol, which is nicely actually removing the printing from the Goodwill sticker and the marker. It's funny that that marker is holding on longer than the printing for the Goodwill sticker. You'd think that the printing would be harder to remove. But it's soaked through with the alcohol right now, so I should be able to just give it a little nudge with the fingertip there. And it should come right up and off. And it's kind of shredding, of course it is. But not too bad to get off the rest of the way. A little more alcohol on there, and that should come right off. And incidentally, in case anyone was wondering, I have a progression that I do for removing marker and labels from things that I buy. And the first step is always alcohol. 9 times out of 10, alcohol works just fine for it. As you can see right here, that label is gone. It is not sticky at all. It's dusty, but not sticky. So I will clean up the rest of the way with a little Symbol Green is what I like to use because it's very gentle on things. It's about the mildest cleaner you can use. And then it should be all cleaned up. And here she is, all cleaned up. A few scratches up top, but all the dust is gone. And in place and connected to my office stereo, which is made up completely of components from thrifting and or Facebook Marketplace. So let's just turn it on. And let's just slide it in. Of course, I'll have to talk over whatever's playing to avoid a copyright strike. But I'd say we've got pretty good odds with this one. So let's just pop it in. And there, we've got it playing. We've got sound. Speed sounds good. And let me turn it down a little bit. And there's our level meter, not quite as responsive as I would like to see, but I have come down to the conclusion that's to how this tape was recorded. But turning it up a little bit, we can absolutely hear that music. It's coming through, it's playing nicely, And of course, here's our eject button, just to keep us out of copyright territory. But I'm very happy with it. So very glad it came out right and working. Not bad.